The great chamber of the Galactic Council stood silent for the first time in 3,000 years. Ambassador of the Empire stared at the empty seats where the human delegation once sat. The chairs remained exactly as the humans had left them, neat, organized, cold. There was no dramatic farewell, no angry speeches, no demands. The humans simply gathered their belongings one morning and walked away without a single word. High Chancellor of the Collective adjusted his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. His four eyes scanned the assembly of nearly 200 species representatives. Everyone wore the same expression of confusion mixed with something none of them wanted to admit: fear. "They cannot simply leave," announced to the chamber. His voice echoed against the ancient walls that had witnessed countless treaties, wars, and alliances. The Terran Republic signed the Covenant of Stars. They are bound by law to remain members of this council until the heat death of the universe itself. Ambassador of the Federation laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter. "And what shall we do, High Chancellor? Send our fleets to drag them back? Force them to participate in a council that has done nothing but mock them for the past 100 years? The chamber erupted into arguments. Voices from dozens of species overlapped in a storm of accusations and denials. But beneath all the noise, a cold truth spread through every representative present. The humans had been the youngest species in the council. They had joined barely 2 centuries ago, a blink of an eye compared to civilizations that had existed for millions of years. And from the very first day, the older species had treated them like children playing at being adults. Remembered the early meetings. The human ambassadors would propose solutions to problems that had plagued the galaxy for eons: trade disputes, resource allocation, border conflicts. And every single time, the council dismissed their ideas without consideration. And dozens of other ancient species would wave away human suggestions with polite condescension at best, open mockery at worst. "Your species is too young to understand the complexities of galactic politics," they would say. "Perhaps in another 1,000 years you will learn." The humans never argued. They never raised their voices. They simply nodded, returned to their seats, and watched, always watching with those strange, patient eyes that showed neither anger nor submission, just observation, like scientists studying an experiment. Now understood what they had been studying: the council itself. 3 days after the human departure, the first crisis arrived. The pirates, a ruthless criminal organization that had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades, launched their most ambitious attack yet. 12 colony worlds across 4 different empires fell under siege simultaneously. It was a coordinated assault of unprecedented scale. High Chancellor demanded immediate military response. He called upon the combined fleets of the Council to crush the pirates once and for all. But when the War Council assembled to plan their strategy, they discovered a terrible truth. None of them knew how to coordinate such a massive operation. The humans handled all fleet coordination, Admiral of the Navy admitted quietly. His mandibles clicked with embarrassment. They developed the communication protocols. They designed the tactical integration systems. They trained officers from every species to work together. "Then use those systems without them," commanded. "We cannot. The systems require constant updates and maintenance, codes that the humans changed every 30 cycles for security. The last update was 90 cycles ago. Everything is locked. Everything is frozen." The rescue operation for the besieged colonies failed miserably. Fleets from different species arrived at different times. Their weapons systems fired at wrong targets. Their shields interfered with each other's sensors. 2 allied cruisers destroyed each other in the confusion. The pirates escaped with billions in stolen resources and thousands of captives. Ambassador demanded answers. She stormed into the Central Archive seeking records of how operations were conducted before the humans joined. What she found shocked her to her core. Before the humans, there were no coordinated operations. Each species fought its own battles, won its own victories. suffered its own defeats. The concept of a unified galactic response simply did not exist. The humans had created it, quietly, without asking for credit, without demanding recognition. They had built the invisible framework that held the council together, and no one had noticed until it was gone. Weeks turned into months. Problems like viruses in a wounded body, trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly collapsed. The humans had designed the navigation charts that accounted for gravitational anomalies, solar flares, and subspace currents. Without regular updates, cargo ships began disappearing into uncharted hazards. Medical cooperation between species ground to a halt. The universal translation of pharmaceutical compounds, the shared research databases, the emergency disease response protocols, all human innovations that no one else knew how to maintain. Diplomatic missions fell apart without human mediators. Ancient grudges between species resurfaced. Border skirmishes erupted into shooting wars. The Empire and the Federation, allies for 6 centuries, nearly destroyed each other over a misunderstood communication that a human translator would have corrected in seconds. High Chancellor finally swallowed his pride. He dispatched an official delegation to Earth, the human, carrying the most generous offer in galactic history. Full voting rights, permanent seats on every committee, complete autonomy over their own territories, anything the humans wanted. The delegation returned empty-handed. Ambassador had been part of that mission. He would never forget what he witnessed on Earth. The humans had not been sitting idle during their departure. They had been building. Cities of impossible beauty rose from their planet's surface. Ships of revolutionary design filled their orbital stations. Technology that made Council achievements look primitive hummed with quiet power. And they were not alone. Dozens of species that had never joined the Galactic Council filled the human cities. The gentle philosophers who had refused council membership due to its aggressive politics. The brilliant engineers who had been rejected for their unconventional biology. The ancient wanderers who had watched the council for and found it wanting. All of them had answered the human call. The human president had received the council delegation with perfect politeness. She listened to their offers without interruption. When they finished, she smiled a smile that held no warmth. "We appreciate your generous proposal," she said, "but we must respectfully decline. The Galactic Council taught us an important lesson during our membership. It taught us that we were unwelcome guests in a house we did not build. So we decided to build our own house. And now we have neighbors who actually want to live beside us." Tried to argue. He explained how much the council needed human expertise, human creativity, human patience. The president listened politely, then asked a simple question. When we offered that same expertise freely for 2 centuries, who in the council valued it? Had no answer. The delegation returned to a council in chaos. News of the human alliance with non-council species spread like fire. Panic gripped the ancient civilizations. The balance of power that had existed for millions of years was shifting, and they had caused it themselves. High Chancellor called an emergency session. For the first time in his long career, he looked old, tired, defeated. He stood before the assembly and spoke words that no High Chancellor had ever spoken. "We were wrong." The chamber fell absolutely silent, continued, his voice heavy with shame. "We looked at the humans and saw only their youth. We measured their worth by the age of their civilization rather than the quality of their contributions. We laughed at their ideas while secretly using them. We dismissed their innovations while building our comforts upon them. And when they finally had enough of our arrogance, we had the audacity to be surprised." He paused, gathering his thoughts. The humans did not need us. They never did. But they chose to join us anyway. They chose to share their creativity, their energy, their unique perspective. And we repaid that choice with contempt. Ambassador rose to speak. Her voice was soft, contemplative. I have studied human history since their departure. Do you know what they call themselves in their oldest languages? Not the chosen, not the supreme, not the eternal. They call themselves the adaptable, the survivors, the ones who keep going. She looked around the chamber. Every challenge that should have destroyed them made them stronger. Every obstacle became a stepping stone. Every rejection became motivation. We rejected them from our council of old and wise species, and in response, they created a new council of their own, one that will likely surpass ours within a generation. The truth of her words settled over the assembly like a cold blanket. The Galactic Council had existed for millions of years. It had survived wars, plagues, and cosmic disasters, but it might not survive its own arrogance. In the months that followed, the Council attempted reforms. They reached out to species they had previously rejected. They revised their dismissive protocols. They tried to rebuild the systems the humans had created. But everything they did felt hollow, like children copying their teacher's work without understanding the lessons behind it. Meanwhile, the human alliance grew. Species from across the galaxy flocked to join, not because humans demanded loyalty or tribute, but because humans offered something the ancient council never had: respect, partnership, the simple acknowledgement that every species, regardless of age, had something valuable to contribute. Ambassador sometimes stood by his window and looked toward the distant star that humans called Sol. He wondered what they were building now, what new wonders they were creating, what friendships they were forming. He wondered if the council would ever earn a second chance, or if their silent departure had marked the beginning of a new galactic order, one where the young and adaptable would lead, and the old and arrogant would slowly fade into history. The humans had taught the galaxy one final lesson with their silence. Power was not measured in age or technology or military might. True power came from being necessary, from being valued, from being the quiet hands that held everything together. And the Galactic Council had thrown that power away, without ever realizing they held it. Now they stood in their ancient chamber, surrounded by empty chairs and fading glory, finally understanding what they had lost. The humans were gone, and they had taken the future with them.